Hello, everyone, and welcome to Into the Mist, a Guild Wars 2 podcast put on by sittingonacouch.com and MMORPG.com. You can follow us at the Twitters of both, which is MMORPG.com and SOAC Gaming. I am joined today by Casey from Chronicles of Tyria, and also David North from MMORPG.com. So welcome to both of you. I hope you've been doing well. We're going to be talking about the Halloween event mostly. So yeah, that's a nice fun event. We're going to talk about something that's not so fun if you're a fan of other NCSoft games, which was the big layoffs that happened.
Oh.
And then talk a bit about the World Tournament Series and maybe some other stuff. So let's jump right in with the Halloween stuff. They just updated it. It was this last Tuesday with the Blood and Madness, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And so basically it was the old... it was basically last year's event, as far as I know, but with some slightly retuned rewards here and there. So, and I believe they also released some new gem store stuff, if I remember correctly. So, have you both gotten a chance to play it so far?
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of it recently.
Yeah, I love it because I love all the events that upscale you to 80, because it's a perfect excuse for me to level my characters and still enjoy the new content and farm stuff without having to go through like the old pedestrian ways of leveling, like doing quests and whatever.
So you'd be talking about the labyrinth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the labyrinth. That is honestly what I look forward to the most. The whole new themed area and going around and killing giant candy corn elementals. I really enjoy that the most. And you play and you see a lot of people on like level 20 characters. They die almost immediately if they get anywhere close to the edge of the Zerg. But if if they stay in the middle, like a group of penguins, if they stay in the middle, they're fine. But I do enjoy that, and they don't really seem to detract. Sometimes when I'm in groups where you see less than level 80, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm carrying this person, but it doesn't really feel like that in the labyrinth. You're just kind of happy that there's other people there.
My favorite thing to do is to watch those low-level people, and they'll just kind of creep up to the skeleton lich and aggro it, and then just see an army just swarm them.
Yeah.
They haven't had a chance to witness that boss yet, so.
Oh, man.
Oh, he's awful.
Yeah, I've been leveling my thief, which is, I think, 40-something, which involves a lot of short bow from about 900 range, because I get one-shot by literally everything in the game. Including, I was fighting some boss, and there were just like some random AoE attack where it shoots candy corn at you, and I would just get one shot by every single candy corn. And there were times...
that's awful, that one.
Yeah, so that was a bit painful.
I like that boss a lot, though. If you're level 80, that's a fun one to go up against.
Yeah, I like the design of the bosses. They seem pretty interesting. And it doesn't feel like the Queen's Pavilion where, like, having low levels was actually a detriment to you, because I don't think the upscaling gets too awful, although I haven't played in like a giant Zerg so far, so
Yeah, the is it the King Candy Corn Elemental or something like that? He's the one that does that candy corn attack, and then not a lot of people realize that you can reflect him, and that's really useful. But I agree with you, David. The fights are so good. I rarely ever feel like, I'm just doing like, hit the button. Whenever you see a boss, you have to think and you have to get your skills and you have to, make sure you avoid the AoE because you're definitely going down. When I was farming one of the doors, which was just, kill the foes, which are great for loot, but they're, you just sit there. I just sat there like this and I had my finger on the button and I'm like, and I said to my husband who was next to me, I'm like, that you're farming right when you take this position. But when you're with the bosses, you're always like tense. You're like, I have to avoid that AoE when it comes and that sort of thing. So yeah, I do. The boss design is really good. I actually very much admire it.
Yeah, I like too when the labyrinthian horror shows up out of nowhere in the middle of the other boss fights, and that's a real test if you can get through that. And one thing I noticed different this year is I haven't seen a big Zerg yet. I've only seen maybe groups of 6 players, so it's been actually a lot harder to get through that stuff this year.
I think the biggest one I've been in is a group of like 15 to 20. And that is edging, I think it was about 15 to 20. That's edging on big, but it's not the biggest that the map could possibly achieve. But I kind of like the smaller groups opposed to the massive zergs that just blob everything. The smaller groups kind of feel more, like when you res someone, you've been resing them like, oops, sorry, microphone. You've been resing them like 5 other times. You get to know the names in your group, and when they're a bit smaller, it's quite nice.
Yeah, even because I have a commander tag now, with the wonderful changes that happened before. So even we had a dual tag running in one Zerg, and it wasn't more than 20 people, I think. And then just yesterday I tried to log in to do some farming, and I was the only person I could find. And as a level 40, I logged off very quickly because I could not handle anything. I tried first to just run to find somebody really fast, and that didn't work at all because I still don't have like Shadow Refuge or anything, so I can't even like stealth past enemies. And then I tried just fighting them one by one, and even that was kind of tedious.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, go on.
Oh no, it's fine. Go.
Just about what you said about not being able to find people, the community has really really embraced that in the sense of that you can actually find lab taxis in the open world content, and I'm the same as you. I log on and there's no one there, there's no commanders, there's nothing going on, and I'm like, oh geez, and I've logged out, and then I've realized that the open world content is there, and you just find something and you go bing and you're in something with a commander. And if you're in a thing and you're trying to taxi people on, that is how you get popular, seriously. Just become an organized lab taxi, and like I advertise, and the second I advertise, I have like 5 people in my party. I'm like, oh, I'm so popular.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that, and I used to use that all the time for other events, but it's a good advice that I'll have to remember next time I try to do that. So, some other stuff that we wanted to bring up with this event was, it's kind of set a precedent now, I think, and they've announced that a similar thing is going to happen for Winter's Day, which is that they're not going to go back and redo festivals. So these are, just kind of festivals that happen. Same thing with the Crown Pavilion event, which will be yearly. Winter's Day and this, they're going to basically be the same content every year. And so they've announced the same for Winter's Day, but they're just going to update the reward system, basically. But we're going to have the same content each year. So I don't know if you guys have any opinions on that. I've heard quite a bit of complaining, which I thought was very strange because at least parts of this event have existed since the very first Halloween event. It's, they added some stuff last time, but it was not at all a brand new event. So I found it funny that people were like angry on Reddit and stuff about this, but I've also found plenty of people who just enjoy the content, so they like to see it come back every year.
I think a major part of it is the fact that Guild Wars has a long history of not just copy-pasting festival events. If you go into Guild Wars 1, you see the April Fools got updated most years. Christmas and Dragon Festival had storylines. And I honestly think that they're missing the point by not, they're... The reason that a lot of people looked forward, in my community anyway, that looked forward to these events, especially Halloween. Man, when the first Halloween came out and you got all this lore on Oswald the Mad King, and you found out that he killed his brother, and you found out all his childhood, and you found out all these things, it blew your mind as a lore hound. You're like, oh my god, this is so cool, I love this. And it kind of makes you feel like, yes, Halloween is a big part of this world, and in this world, Halloween has a reason and there is a lore behind it, and it's not just a holiday for Halloween. It's actually Mad King's Day, you know, because of this guy, and you know, it has a background in this world. It doesn't exist just because we have Halloween. And in the second year, Saul the Son found out we found out that he had a son. You know, it's stricken from the record books, and there's going to be a war. It made it sound like there was going to be like a war between the two. And you know, Eddie is flawed, and Oswald is this big joker, and it's really interesting to see that dynamic. And then they kind of went, oh, you know, like there's progression to this, and then all of a sudden, no, it's copying and paste every year now, and it's kind of like, oh, all right then, you know, and I think it really misses the point. People like Guild Wars because there's so much lore and story. I mean, personal story is basically a big lore story thing, you know, and some people don't enjoy it, yes, but you got to admit there's so many people that play it for that. And if you just cut out this storyline, especially Halloween, Winter's Day doesn't matter so much because there's not a big you know, they weren't following the Duena versus Grenth anyway, but you know, they made this kind of thing like the Lunatic Court. They brought him back. You know, there's this whole story about the Lunatic Court trying to bring the Mad King back and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, no. And I think it really doesn't gel right, and I think they're missing out on something really big and beautiful just because they're going, no, living story is our only thing that we're going to focus on, when really these events have been a long history.
And I think, you know, because last year when we got to see the Mad King's son, that was actually kind of a small addition, really. You could blow through that in like 7 minutes. And that was a bummer. So I was hoping this year we would see something, and we didn't. And it's been kind of a strange progression for the game in general, because when it first came out, they said that there was a specific development team straight for the holidays. That's all that they would work with. It seems kind of like now we're seeing all these development teams just kind of disappear, and those types of things just aren't going to happen in the game. So for me, it's like, okay, if you're not going to advance on what you're doing with the holidays, what are you doing? And if you say living world, to me, that's not enough, because these are things that you get maybe 3 hours of gameplay content out of, and that's not enough. So where are these people going to? What are they working on?
Yeah. And I think one point that somebody made on Reddit was that it wasn't like they just re-released very similar content, or like, you know, they just re-released the Labyrinth. They literally re-released the exact same event. All of the dialogue is the same, all of the bugs are the same. I mean, they literally, since they took this off last year, they didn't touch it except to add some of these new reward systems. It is the exact same content, which, if you're going to have something where you're going to reuse it every year, I can kind of understand that if you're going to use those development resources for something else that's very important, but at least have 1 or 2 people whose job it is to go back and to retool some of the dialogue so that it's not outdated, or to go back and fix some of these bugs that were happening and stuff like that. Like, at least make it a more polished event every year, even if it is the same event. So I felt like that was a really big oversight on their part, to just leave it as the exact same event, including all of the flaws.
And I'm fine with them reusing content, like the Clockwork Tower, the Labyrinth is fine. But Halloween 2 was the first holiday event that the game had. And it had, like you said earlier, all this lore was thrown in. And then second year, they added even more. Even that 7 minutes was still better than nothing. So I would at least expect even that. I've played a little bit of the event this year, but not nearly as much. I've been pretty much just logged off because I've been sad about it. Great. I'm just like sitting on my couch now with a sad face.
No, I think the laziness of it all is kind of highlighted also by the achievements, where the achievements have been copy-pasted from last year, and even if you've done the achievement, you can, you know, it's kind of like, oh no, this is, you know, version 2.0. Like, so every year they're going to give you the exact same achievement, and then you just have to redo the same thing, you know, like, and there's some of them are silly achievements, like bathing or like throwing up on the Mad King, blood on the Bloody Prince in the story instance. And like those silly ones where the joke is gone, you know, you've done it once. So every year we're gonna have to do the exact same joke, and people are like, "Yeah, no, it's fine because you get more achievement points." So I don't really do achievements to get the achievement points per se. I do it to, you know, for extra little dot points of things to do in the game. So yeah, no, they really need to fix that. If they're gonna copy and paste every year, it's not gonna be nice.
Yeah, and it was because I remember the first Halloween event, which I played a lot because they had the unique back pieces at the time, the Mad Memories or the Mad yeah, and so those were awesome. They're still back pieces that I have that I put in the wardrobe now, and they're really cool. They're unique. It was a really fun event where you were running around. You were always asking people in chat what was going on. They had guides online if you were completely clueless like I was. So that was a really fun event. Even the second year, because I believe that was when they added like the semi-raid instance type thing.
Ascent to Madness or something like that. Decent.
Yeah, but they had like a unique boss fight that was kind of interesting and fun, and you had something to do.
Yeah, where did that go?
Yeah.
Why isn't that back, every year?
So, I mean, they added something cool, even if it wasn't, a lot of content. It was just a couple of minutes to beat it, but it was still something fun. It was something unique, and, like you guys said, it just feels like they kind of, I don't know what, but they just didn't put in as much effort, which leads me to one of the other points on this, which was, if they're not using these resources on holiday events, what are they using them for? Because they're obviously not just sitting around taking a holiday break. They're not. They're doing something. They have to be. Otherwise, ArenaNet wouldn't be successful. And in a later point that we'll talk about, they would have had layoffs. So they obviously are using these development resources on something. But it's not just something, it's something that they haven't announced. So it's hurting them in the short run, even if they do, even if they're working on, say, an expansion that we haven't heard about yet, which is really good for the game. Because they haven't announced this and they gave us a mediocre release, it's hurting the game in the short run because people are feeling like they're just using this as a cash cow. I've seen multiple Reddit comments where people were just saying, well, they're not doing anything because they're making money. So what's the point? Why should they have to release all this content? They could just release some more gem story clothes and, milk the Halloween event and move on.
I have to admit that this has honestly affected me on a subconscious level. I love Guild Wars, and it would take a lot for me to have to walk away. It would have to be completely, like pay to win, start to get like that, where they're starting, and I don't think the people I now are like that. But it has affected me on a subconscious level, especially with the gem changes where I love Skrit and I love the new Noble outfit, and I haven't brought the candy corn Skrit from the gem store or the Noble outfit just simply because I don't know where this is going. I don't know what is happening. I feel like a lot of things I love are being taken out of the game, and it's not like I'm trying to punish them. Like, I'm not consciously going, they're not doing what I want, so I'm not buying from the gem store, which is perfectly okay thing to do, Buying from not spending your money on a game is the best passive aggressive way to deal with things that you don't like. But on a subconscious level, it's like I don't really feel like it's worth it, Like, I don't really want to put my money into it that much anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely has, and like you said, transparency would really help them now. Totally not the first person to say that. I've heard someone else say that as well, like going, obviously something's going on and they're not telling us, and instead we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs thinking Mommy and Dad don't love us anymore.
Especially now, like over the past couple months, they've been, in the crosshairs from their players for so many reasons now. They really So now is the perfect time to start winning those people back. And and there's a lot of politics with that too. NCSoft being the actual publisher, they're probably in control of a lot of things, what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. So the message shouldn't just be thrown at ArenaNet; it should also be thrown at NCSoft. Hey, you're screwing up. Stop it.
Yeah.
But I don't think NCSoft really listens to anyone apart from the bank sheet. They're a big publisher where they don't really need to have direct interactions with people. The best we can do is ANet, and I think that's about it.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So one last thing for the Halloween event before we move on. Something that somebody had brought up was the Raffle reward system that they're using for this, which is as you farm the event, you get like some shiny stuff that you give to a scrit, and that enters you into a North American and EU raffle. It's combined, and they will give away a certain amount of the original Halloween skins. So some of them are still insanely expensive, I think, or at least I imagine they are, like the Great Saw or whatever, and the Scythe, and so some of these will be very expensive skins if you get them. But the interesting thing to mention is that it's a lottery system, so it's completely RNG based, which is of course something that all Guild Wars 2 players love. And you get more chance by the more you farm. So if you farm a lot, or if you happen to buy a bunch of bags or something, you'll get a higher chance to win. And it's also shared between NA and EU. So it is completely possible for one region to get significantly more than another. It's completely possible for one player to get multiple skins, they have said. And you also don't get to pick which skin you get. So you could end up with a skin that you completely hate, and it's also not that much money because other people also don't like it. So you have overcome these, incredible RNG odds to get a skin that you don't really care about and isn't worth much. So I've heard some criticism over this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the big thing to remember is that they couldn't really introduce these items back into the game very easily because of the trading post prices of them. I mean, if you have people I think the gritting shield or whatever it's called is like over 1,000 gold on the trading post. If they all of a sudden everyone gets one, you can get them the same as the other ones or something like that, a lot of people are going to be miffed, and a lot of people have lost a lot of money putting it up for that price. And I think, they don't have to be considerate, and they don't have to be concerned about players, what they've spent on the trading post. But I think this is a really good way to introduce those back into the system without overflowing the market. I don't think there's very many other ways they could have done it.
Yeah, I hadn't checked these in a long time because I knew I wasn't going to pay this amount of money. But the Great Saw Great Scored skin is currently listed for selling at 2,400 gold. So, even the buy price, if you get one of these and you sell it right away, you will still make a nice 1,300 gold on it.
Yeah.
So, and they're giving
That's
away
winning the lottery.
And they're giving away like 100 of those skins.
Yeah.
So obviously the price is going to tank a little bit, but if any of those people are smart, they'll just list them 1 gold under each other, and they'll keep it up at 2,399 gold instead. But I mean, it's quite a bit of a lottery, because I know that some of those skins are also worth like less than 100 gold. So you guys might want to make friends with the Mystic Toilet so that you guys get some better odds, because that's pretty crazy. And
it is.
Yeah, I'm like you said, they obviously can't just reintroduce these. They have they're very solid economist. I think his name's John Smith. And so I'm sure that he was talking with them about that, because he is very vocal about not just completely crashing markets for absolutely no reason. And these are obviously fairly big markets for some people. So you're right. I don't know that they could have introduced them in a great way. I just feel like this was a bit of a weird way to do it because it's everything that people hated about rewards.
Yeah. I also, you can buy the wrappers on the gem store, which is one of the things that it's like you could spend so much money on them and pay and still get nothing, and that's the equalizing force in the gem store. But at the same time, it's like you're spending so much for your money to get zero. You got to be really odd to spend so much money on those wrappers, and even if there's a chance that you can get nothing at all.
Yeah, and it's not like, this isn't like a raffle at, some local place where there's a 1 in 100 chance. I mean, there are, according to ArenaNet, millions of players in this raffle, and you have, there's maybe 100, or even if there's a couple hundred of the really good skins to get, you really don't have great chances, even if you buy a ton of things. You're still going to have that one person who still plays 18 hours a day, who's just constantly farming bags and stuff, and is just going to completely blow normal people's chances out of the water. So it's just, it was a very interesting idea, and they threw it in right at a great time where they made the gem store change, which of course, another thing that a lot of people loved, where they, for anybody who doesn't know, they made it so that the gem to gold conversion could only be done in tiers of 400. So instead of being able to convert, just a bit of gold into, even just a couple of gems because maybe you wanted to buy a single, Black Lion key and you had 100 gems instead of, I think, like the 125 it takes. Nope, sorry, now you got to buy 400 gems. Which was, yeah.
It's on my list of things. Like, I have a little list which I have, like, at the top it says, "What the fuck, ain't it?" And that is on the top of my list now. Like, and I've heard other people say this as well. Like, how did that get through? Like, you have to not be playing the game and not know how the gem store works. Like, unless ANET has, like, unlimited gems, like, the ANET employees, part of being a dev means that you don't have to buy anything for real money from the gem store. So they have no idea how people buy stuff from the gem store. And because I more times than not, I've converted from gold to gems by just small odd amounts, like just little amounts to make up so that I could buy something. And then they come out with this reason like, oh, it makes it easier for new players. It's like, what new player has enough money to spend on 400 gems? I think that's like 83 gold. And like, new players, are new. They don't know farming routes or methods or anything like that. And that frustrates me because either they're lying or they just don't get how the player base work, like, you take that out. Who approved that?
And Csoft. That's it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the change, but from what you just said and everything, it sounds exactly like, hey, our publisher wants us to do this and we kind of have to.
Yeah, because something else to back that up was that this did not go through the alpha servers. So this did not reach the player testers at all. They had no clue. It was just thrown in the game, which is just another. That whole testing system is something that I've kind of been a critic of for a while now, because they have it, but it's almost just like a customary thing now, like, well, we have to have something. But
it's tradition.
Yeah, but you're not going
Like
to
the
test
Queen.
something like this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a kind of thing that you would put up to them. I mean, unless you already know that it was an awful idea and that people were going to hate it, which they did, and then went on the forums, and it took them only a couple of days to come up with the obvious solution, which was just make it optional, which is exactly what they're going to do to it.
Yeah, you can have that front screen on so that it looks like to, like NC stuff that you're trying to rake in, get people, and then just have the thing on optional on the side, and that will just work perfectly. Why did they not think of this before? It's such a simple, elegant solution. What happened? And the really sad thing is that makes the player base feel like they're trying to see what they can get away with. And for a long time, I felt like ANET wasn't the sort of people that I felt like I have to, because a lot of players feel like they on their guard, especially on these sort of games, like looking for any signs that they're becoming a money hungry, pay to win thing. And it feels like they were trying to slip something past us. And the thing is that I don't think the people at ANET individually are people like this.
Right.
You see them and they look like good people and they're trying their best. So where did this come from? I guess it doesn't matter now, but and then they come out with these awful, awful expressions, which you know what they mean. Like, I think Gail Gray made a comment, like, when she was trying to back it up, which was like, make it new for new players, and we want it to be a shopping experience. And so, like, that sort of stuff comes out from psychopaths, like business executives, like, lying through your teeth, coming up with crap. I came up with that sort of crap when I did English Lit, when I had to waffle on about what an author meant and stuff like that. But I'm getting a bit vocal about it now. But yeah, it's such a weird thing, and I don't know what it means for the future of the game, and it's really gotten a lot of people, obviously like me, the way I'm reacting now, very tense and worried about what's going on.
Yes. Same here.
Yeah, and it was too bad because Gail's normally a really awesome dev that I love to see post on the forums, because she's usually responding to people who are like lying through their teeth and being really obnoxious, and she just smacks them down into their place really quickly and I love her posts. And then she did this, and it was just the strangest. It feels to me like it must have been a corporate decision, and then when the feedback came, they were just like, well, that's your job, go deal with it.
Yeah, like, this is what you have to say, and she, like, honestly has no choice, If the company says these are the reasons we did it, that's why she did it, She didn't make any of the decisions herself, she just has to say it. And we also know that there's some strange, PR decisions going on. When that Josh Foreman he was talking about how he had some trouble with the development of the SAB, because people were upset, and he came to him very honest and open and talked about it. And then he wrote on his personal blog, I'm getting very frustrated with people telling me that I can't be honest, and I think he said something about ANET and that sort of thing. And it kind of goes, well, this was such a great move. Like, why are the PR people trying to quash it down? Like, I think it's between, not losing faith from the investors and keeping the player base happy. And so you can't admit mistakes because of investors, but the player base likes it when you admit mistakes. So I feel sorry for them stuck in between.
It seems strange to me because if I was an investor, I just want my money. That's it. I don't really care about anything else. It's unless they're really weird. Investors are just about making their money back. They want to make their money back, and they want to make more money on top of it. So it doesn't feel like they should care about the individual goings on, as long as they're getting money back. And as long as it's, they're still getting the money, as long as it's not, being like way more than it should be. Because I could understand if they got concerned if the game wasn't doing well. But making players happy is how you get money. Happy players buy more. So I don't understand why you would, I understand, because you're right, there probably is something where there's some corporate decision that's being made that doesn't make sense, and they're fighting with what the players want. But it seems like at the end of the day, the publishers, the developers, the investors, all they really need is to make money, so make the players happy. It's not like the most complicated solution ever. Happy players equals more money equals good.
Yeah.
So I just didn't quite understand that. And to kind of continue on from that, there was an announcement not super long ago that NCSoft was laying off employees for all of their Western developers except for ArenaNet. So, just as an example, Carbine, the developers of WildStar, lost 60 developers.
Holy moly!
Yeah, they lost 60, and they weren't... Go ahead.
No, that's all I was saying. That's a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. And
There
I mean,
he is.
it wasn't... Because I was watching a video from someone who's been very involved with the developers, because the Carbine developers have been known to talk on Twitter with people. The person in question was a fairly well-known World of Warcraft player, and he actually had a developer who would talk to his guild at nights, who would actually be in like their TeamSpeak server and hear them out on their opinions on the raids and stuff like that. That person got laid off. So I mean, these aren't, like, they weren't all non-essential marketing people, which is what a lot of them were, according to, I don't remember if it was NCSoft or Carbine who announced it, but a lot of them were kind of people who you didn't need anymore because, you know, once you release a game, you tend to have extra staff that you don't necessarily need anymore. You don't necessarily need all the marketing people still, but they definitely laid off, like, well-known people who were involved in the community and development of the game. And it's a big thing because it obviously means that there's some money issues there, because that's why you would have layoffs. Which brings up an interesting point. It's not a surprise that WildStar wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be. Pretty much everybody knows that. But ArenaNet didn't have layoffs, and they were the only developer who didn't have layoffs.
Yeah.
So they're obviously doing fairly well on the money front. They've obviously made, you know, the publisher and investors happy. But then we contrast that with what they just released with the Halloween content, which was something that didn't have a lot of work done into it. If they didn't lay anybody off, the only thing that I can think of that would make sense is that everybody is fairly vital to the team right now and is currently working on important projects.
And
What
the
important
living world
projects?
isn't big enough for that
Right.
many.
Exactly. The Living World has been a fairly consistent team that I don't think they've really grown or shrunk any. So what is it that all of these people are working on?
And I just want to point out one other thing. I don't know if you guys have had to deal with this. With the Living World, each release has been insanely buggy.
Yep.
So there's more resources that aren't showing up even in the Living World. So where is that Q&A team, and what the heck are they doing?
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
it's just, you know, it's not necessarily something that we can answer. I could make stuff up and say it was about an expansion, which is, of course, still my idea.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a logical assumption, though, because
Right.
that requires such a large team.
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
the easiest assumption that they're working on an expansion or a new campaign. I don't know if they're going to do it like Guild Wars 1, but you're right, because that would require a lot of Q&A. It would require their map team, which has kind of been missing in action since Edge of the Mist came out. You know, it would require a lot of their big developers who have supposedly been missing in action since the game was released. So, you know.
It would also explain, like, a lot of the one thing I say is that ANET is a small company, you know, with, you know, trying to fight in the big fish's pond, you know, they got nowhere near as much as WoW. And if you see, like, it's commonly known that their studio is always on, like, what's it called, high alert, like everyone's always working hard and it's, you know, rushed to the race line and that sort of thing all the time. And it always seemed odd to me that there wasn't a massive hiring spasm after the success of the game, especially after a year when they started making enormous amount of money. And if NCSoft is starting to, like, lay people off and ArenaNet avoided it, it kind of explains why no one was hired in these, when they so desperately need people, you know, to stop this constant rush to the finish line and mentality and to keep the bugs out. Obviously, maybe their hiring is not an option right now.
Yeah, but I mean, even with that, we know that they still are hiring some people because they just recently put out the job application for the raid developer. So,
couple artists, 3D stuff, a
Yeah.
couple positions there over the year and stuff. So I think it's just they need to fill in certain spots because an expansion doesn't need as many people to make the core game. You still need a lot of people, but it's not as much because you have all your core programming and everything. You're just building on top of that, so you don't need as many.
Yeah. And so it's
That's to explain that.
yeah, and another thing that they've had going on for a while now is that they hired an AI consultant, I believe in April, because AI is kind of a big problem.
Yeah.
Not even just for PvE, but if you simply want to play certain builds within professions, you very quickly realize that AI is a very big issue. I'm fairly well known on the forums because I know a lot about minions for the Necromancer class. And the AI has gone through a significant amount of changes. There was a point where I was trying to teach people how to use the minions, and I had almost a 20-point checklist that you had to go through in order if you wanted to make sure that they actually acquired aggro 100% of the time. And it was very complicated. It involved sometimes you had to attack twice, sometimes you had to hit them with certain abilities. It was really ridiculous, and they've gone through. Go ahead.
I said that's what I was doing wrong.
Yeah, I mean it was very specific. You could not use like a staff because marks wouldn't trigger any aggro. It was really really complicated, and so they have since really shortened those rules. Now they're supposed to work basically at the beginning of any targeted casting animation of anything, or when you damage something. Except they don't work like half the time. They get stuck on random objects, they have pathing issues, and the same is true for AI for pretty much any profession. Some of them do better than others. Like turrets don't move, so they don't get stuck with pathing issues. And rangers have like a forced attack button. You can call them back, stuff like that. But there's still some really strange issues, and it presents itself in the mob AI. And part of it is that they've tied all of the AI in the game to a single inheritance source. So literally everything in the game that runs off of AI has been brought from a single main source, and then any additional features that they have is kind of like a secondary add-on unique to them. But they have a really strange inheritance, which means if you want to fix any AI in the game perfectly, you basically have to fix all of it at once. So they've had this AI consultant since April who had worked with developers at ArenaNet before, but he now has his own company that is literally just AI. That's all they work on. They consult for AI. They've had him since April, and that's a very big project that they've obviously needed to work on. It's been a big deal for a lot of players, but it's also something that I can't imagine that they're going to release in a mundane patch. You're not going to wake up one Tuesday morning and see that, hey, we fixed all the AI in the game. This is at least feature patch level content. And so, it's just more to the point of there are still big things that they have to be working on, but they still don't tell us about them. I still have to tell people about this in the weekly threads that come up in the forums about AI still being an issue. I still have to bring up, it's an issue, but they have all these weird issues, and they've got this guy who's helping them, but they're not transparent. And I think it comes back to the same issue that we have in a lot of other areas where a lot of other game companies have pushed more towards being very upfront about what they're doing. League of Legends will tell you months in advance what's going to happen with the new season that they're coming in. They've already started pre-season 5, and season 4 hasn't ended yet. The patch won't even hit until January, and they're already testing changes publicly. We know exactly what they're looking at. But ArenaNet doesn't do that. They even hide things from their own player testers. And so it's just a really weird thing where I think they have an issue with transparency. And even if they have all this work going on, which I think it's fairly obvious that they do, I think they've got an issue with making sure that we know that, because like you mentioned before, we kind of feel like the kids that the parents don't love.
Not paying attention to us anymore.
Right. And it's not like they need to give us fancy stuff all the time. just a little pat on the back. Good job, sport. That's all we need. You know. So, moving on with this into the WTS, which has been going on starting yesterday, although obviously the people who fed into that tournament were from the Tournament of Glory, which started before. The EU was yesterday. I don't know if either of you watched it much, even for the chance at free precursors.
No, I didn't get a chance to.
I'm gonna get in so much trouble from Jabari for not watching it.
Yeah, I honestly didn't watch it a ton either. I completely forgot about it until it was like really late in the day, and I think at that point TCG was already winning. Because if I look at it, yeah, I mean they had a pretty easy road to the final. So TCG won for EU, which is not a surprise at all. They've been pretty dominant for a long time, and then Maiden Meta, I believe, got second. So I'm not 100% sure how the WTS works, but if I remember correctly, the top teams from each area go to play, and then whenever it's located at home, so if you're in Europe, whenever the WTS is in Europe, then you get 2 European teams, if I remember correctly. So another thing to bring up is that NA was today. However, people were getting allegedly DDoSed, and they literally could not complete matches because somebody was getting disconnected constantly, and it got to the point where they basically said, sorry guys, but the quality of matches had dropped, that they just didn't feel like it was fair to the players. They couldn't really do anything, so they have postponed it. I don't know that it's been announced what's going to happen with that.
Jeez.
That's weird.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. I was watching it today. I kind of had it up on my extra, I do most of my work on my desktop, so I had my laptop open with it, kind of checked in, tried to get free precursors. Didn't work out, but I still caught some of the games, and so, I got to watch a little bit, but they had a lot of issues with disconnects, and it didn't pan out very well, and it's an unfortunate thing because this is supposed to be the qualifiers for their biggest tournament series ever. We're talking about $50,000 prize pools, and having to completely postpone a tournament is a really big deal. It's not small, and so obviously something, I'm not sure what they're going to do with it at this point, because they can't accept a low standard. You can't have some team losing just because their player was getting targeted.
Yeah.
But they don't have like a pause feature in PvP, which has been something that's been requested a lot, but they just haven't been able to work out yet because it's a different game than other games which do have those, so it would be fairly difficult to program. Is it just a flat, everything freezes instantly, which is what happens in other games, or, what? So I think this kind of highlighted the need for that. But, yeah.
Huh. It's crazy. Especially after all the momentum PvP's been getting, because I feel like, they're really bringing it up like, hey, there's this part of the game, you should all be playing it, and I hear a lot of people talking about it more than last year. So I think it's growing. That's a shame.
Yeah, I think for Europe it had over 2,000 viewers when I tuned in.
Wow.
And that wasn't for the finals or anything. That was, just a game. And yeah, I mean, that's quite a bit, especially for Guild Wars 2.
It's really good.
Yeah, and so I think it was unfortunate that it had these issues. So, we'll find out in probably today or tomorrow what's going on. I believe Misspedia was organizing the North American one. So I'm pretty sure that we'll figure it out relatively quickly what's going to happen, if they're just going to do them and record them and then play them back for the stream so that people don't know when they're going on and can't mess with them. But, those are kind of unfortunate steps that they might have to take. But, there's not necessarily much they can do about it.
Yeah.
Something somebody said in chat about why they haven't been as transparent as they could be was because they can't trust their programmers to make deadlines. So they don't want to be held responsible for not living up to promises. And so this probably ties back to what has happened before and what somebody has publicly mentioned, which was that they used to make dev posts fairly regularly about content that wasn't solidified yet. The issue wasn't so much that their programmers or developers couldn't get the content out, it was that the content itself was determined not to be worth finishing, basically. They decided that for whatever reason, the content just couldn't make it out. And so they... Right, it happens. That's a very normal part of development. But it got a lot of backlash because the second you say anything to anybody and you don't cover it with, just giant stickers everywhere saying, this is not a promise, this is a work in progress that may or may not come to fruition. They got a lot of flack for it. So I think that's part of it now. I would say that to a small degree, there have been instances where they just couldn't get it out fast enough. Or there was a disconnect with the example of custom arenas. They mentioned a couple of months before they were ready to be released publicly that they were going to put them out and then have the alpha testing or the beta testing, which was with just organized groups. So, certain people would get them that were known in the community. I know Sitting on a Couch got one arena, and that was how we could do the tournaments back in the day. So, but they didn't end up getting them out to the public very quickly because there were, of course, bugs, which they never could have found normally. But I don't know that was necessarily an issue of them not getting out fast enough. I don't even remember them necessarily putting out dates on a lot of things. They've tended to be really careful with putting dates on stuff because when you put a date on something, it becomes a promise. And then when you don't fulfill promises, people get mad. And so that's hurt them with precursor crafting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Coming 2013, precursor crafting.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Those are the days when you believe those posts. And they made it seem like it was so near because that data mined Raven staff came out that looked like it would be a legendary, and then nothing after that. And you're like, where did this content go? What were these assets doing in the game if they weren't even near? But it might have been a fact that they figured something out and they were developing it, and then John Smith, the economics guy, was like, you can't really just tank the system like this, and maybe there was a problem and they had to think about it, and then it got shelved or something like that. But no, you're right, it's a really tedious balancing act between all the players demanding something and when you say it's going to come out and what actually happens in the end.
Yeah, and especially with data mining, because I know it's something people love to see. There's that shaman on Reddit who data mines a lot of the outfits before they come out. He's even got this really awesome new modeling thing so he can have 3D models of them before they come out. And it's really cool, but there's even data mining for new races in the game. There's actually very small, I'm not sure how involved it is, but there's, they've data mined new playable races. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. It just means that maybe in the studio they were messing around with it a little bit, and it ended up getting pushed to the live patch because nobody, took it out. So I would always be very careful with trusting data mine stuff because, there's a reason that they haven't announced it, and it's just kind of sitting in the code somewhere. So, especially a more recent one was the healing skills that were released. People found the data mine versions of those fairly quickly. Unfortunately, they didn't find the current versions they found a very old version that was somehow still in the game, and so they ended up like a month old version of the healing skills was what everybody was getting really excited about. They're like, whoa, these skills are so good. And they were, we were all happy and we were, crunching over the numbers. And it was a big deal on the Necromancer forums because we had the Signet coming out. It had like its own reflect part on it. Or not reflect, but like its own retaliation effect. We were super excited. And then they previewed the actual change. And it was massively different. And everybody was super let down. And it was, on one side I understood why they were let down because I was really excited about the version they were showing us. But they changed it. There was no promise that would be the real thing. It just happened to be in the game, and we found it, and then it changed. And people were kind of mad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's why I don't look at data mining anymore.
No, I still do. I'll still check it. I love watching it, even though I've learned to temper my expectations a bit. Don't get super excited about something before it hits. Especially because I've realized that there's a whole range of expectations that can change. I've even learned to not get excited over what ArenaNet has told us they will do in previews where they show us like the exact changes. Because even then, they'll tell you like they're changing this one thing, and then their interpretation of what that change was and yours are totally different. So...
What's that thing, like, the secret to happiness is expecting nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, that's it that we've got for the show. We're right on the hour mark. If anybody has any questions in chat, feel free to fire them out real fast before we leave. But as we close up, thanks both of you for making it. For anybody who's wondering what this strange gray box is, unfortunately Jebro could not make it due to personal reasons, but he'll be back with us. So so he'll be back to talk with us about the wonderful WTS and I imagine we'll have in the next 2 weeks, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Living Story starts next, I think it's next week, so the next time we have the show, we'll definitely have lots to talk about.
Oh yeah, it is actually starting next week.
Finally something to do.
Do we have any idea what they're actually going to do with the Living Story? Like, have they previewed anything?
No, I think they're going to this week, though. Didn't they say they were going to do a little trailer, and half of that is going to be like a recap, and then the other half will actually be stuff for what's happening next. I think that's what it is.
I have a tiny suspicion that the Living Story will somehow incorporate Halloween, like just a tiny bit of it or something like that. I'm not sure, like I'm not 100% sure because I'm thinking about replayability, but I'm pretty sure it was data mined some voice acting for Halloween was done. So I kind of think that maybe one part of it will have something to do with Halloween, and then I don't know what's going to come after that.
Morjamuth has made an alliance with the Mad King.
That would be a stretch.
Somebody asked a question, who won the tournament today? They couldn't finish watching. No idea, because the tournament didn't finish today, unfortunately. I believe you can find the brackets at arenanet.challenge with a .com. Is that a different language? I don't know.
It sounds fancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's at challenge. So I'll link that in chat real fast.
Challenge.
Oh,
I have
can't.
to.
Right. I
You
can't
got in
post.
trouble.
Oh man, that's sad. Alright, let's see. Oh, wow. Alright, so it's
You got
at...
in trouble on your own stream.
I know.
Oh.
Let's see. It was... So, challenge... WTS... NA. Alright. So, it's arenanet.challenge challenge.com/the stuff that I entered. So go ahead and do that before I get myself in more trouble. But yeah, they didn't finish the stream earlier. Wow, I got all my messages deleted. Harsh. But yeah, so they just couldn't complete the tournament today because there were connection issues with people attacking one of the players. I don't remember who, but their IP got out somehow and they're DDoSing them. So the results, as far as they got, was the Abjurd got to the finals, it looks like. And then it was Uncivilized Rough Boys versus In Honor of Vendetta, who were going to play for the other spot in the finals. So that appears to be where it got to. So it looks like they've got a couple, 2 or 3 matches left. So 2, 3. Yeah, so it looks like they had 2 or 3 left, and then they were done. So, thanks everyone for coming and watching the show. We hope you enjoyed it. You can follow it at MMORPG.com on Twitter or SOAC Gaming. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks to talk about the new Living Story and the tournament and some other stuff. So, we'll see you guys later.